Hooli, what's up?
Hello?
Hello.
Testing. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. What's up?
Oh, shit, I'm kind of nervous now. I'm actually a big fan. I've been watching you for like the last 4 months, almost all of your videos.
Nice.
But
Well, you know
I
what?
just,
For as long as I've known you, I've been a big fan of you too. So, what's up? What's the contention?
yeah, I just had a few takes that I thought were kind of off,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. I'm trying to think of these off the top of my head. I think for starters, I didn't. Okay, so you were kind of defending ISIS, sort of. I don't want to say you're defending ISIS. I'm sure you would put it differently, but like, if I remember correctly, you were kind of comparing, um, what's his name, Sargon's, uh, his discourse,
Political
all of,
positions with those of ISIS?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I thought that was really like when you do that, you say, oh, what's his name? Sargon is conservative,
Mm-hmm.
and ISIS is conservative. That seems really reductive. You're like, well, like it. So you're saying almost like a slippery slope argument, where it's like, oh, uh, if Sargon continued to do whatever, like let's say he could have the world as he wished, he would have it like ISIS.
I
Like,
don't think that the world would be like as though it were controlled by ISIS if Sargon had his desired world. The issue I have is that usually the people who are most fanatical about condemning militant Islamicism are the people whose political positions are basically an anglicized version of those. So it's not just that they're both conservative, it's that Sargon is an autocratic fascist who who A, believes in a conspiracy brought about by egghead intellectual progressives to destroy the West, B, he believes that degeneracy and cultural assimilation are bringing down our once great empire, and C, he believes in establishing like an ethno-state to return us to our former glory. He doesn't have the same like religious element as ISIS, but when it comes to like the baseline political positions, the only real difference is that he uses a microphone and they use guns. It's just a little
okay,
hypocritical to me. Like I'm the one who should be able to criticize ISIS. ISIS is a conservative institution. I
so
stand against that.
okay, you just said the only difference is that he talks and ISIS uses guns. So it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You're implying that if he had the guns and the firepower, we'd be living in some kind of, horrific ISIS-like state.
Well, I think we'd be living in an autocratic fascist ethno-state, similar to what we had back during the days of like Nazi Germany. Yeah. I mean, people like Sargon have had guns before. We see what happens. Like, that's what it turns into. Now, of course, the particular historical circumstances are different. Obviously, Islam is not the same as Christianity. There are differences in its aesthetics and the tendencies of its followers, though I don't think those differences are very significant, personally. And Sargon is, at least to my knowledge, not a particularly religious person, so there's not as much of like a moral imperative there. But fundamentally, yeah, I think that the arm of his history swings in the same direction.
Okay, but to me, it seems like that's the slippery slope argument to the 10th power,
I'm not saying it's a
Sargon
slippery slope. I'm saying that it's the same. Their arguments, their position, the alt-right and ISIS fundamentally use the same political tactics and the same political reasoning to achieve virtually identical ends. They're just opposed to one another.
Okay, well, this actually kind of ties into my other criticism that I have of the left and, certain things that it seems you kind of condone. The idea, to put it, like the punch a Nazi idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a clear delineation between speech and violence. And what I really dislike about the left is when they go after speech because they claim that it leads to violence.
Well, I'm very pro-free speech, but being pro-free speech does sometimes mean that you have to prevent people from engaging in certain forms of speech. Like, are you pro-life? Like, do you believe generally people have a right to life? I don't mean like abortion. Like, do people have a right to life?
Yeah, sure.
What do you do if you're in the middle of like Midland Park and like a gunman like starts open firing on people, like just starts gunning them down, 10, 20, 30 people, and you send the police in? Like, should the police shoot, or should they like try to capture the guy without killing him?
They should kill him, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree. And much in the same way that you understand that in that instance, it is necessary to kill to protect the sanctity of life, I too recognize that in order to protect the sanctity of freedom and of free speech, there are some types of speech that need to be curtailed.
All right, so it sounds like you're saying you're pro free speech, except for people you disagree with.
No, there are tons of people I disagree with who I think should have a right to free speech. There are some types of free speech that stifle other forms of free speech. Like, for example, imagine it's the 1960s and you're a civil rights advocate, you know, like MLK type, you know, and you are constantly being beleaguered, harassed, sometimes even threatened by Ku Klux Klanners, white citizen councilmen, police chiefs, the FBI, stuff like that. Now, some of those acts on their part are acts of free speech. They have a legal right to those things. But in a practical sense, all that ends up doing is stifling your right to free speech, because you can't fundamentally enact it if there are powerful entities out there that are trying to stifle you. Does that make sense?
The problem is it really up to you to decide, though? Like, who are you? Like, you're not the arbiter of what's acceptable speech and what isn't. In my personal opinion, I think a person should be allowed to go out and say, hey, slavery should be reinstated. And, you know, people can listen to him and disregard him and call him out as an idiot. But, you know, punching him is stupid. I just don't agree with that at all.
Well, who decides whether or not it's okay to execute somebody to preserve others' lives?
Well, I mean, that would just be, what is it, like the pragmatic or just a pure numbers game, like you would see.
But who decides that? Like, who decides when it's okay to kill a person to protect the lives of others?
The police.
What? Okay, so clearly somebody can decide it. So we have somebody who gets to decide, or some institution that gets to decide, what types of free speech are unacceptable and harmful. Like, we have an institution that can decide when it's okay to take a life. I'm sure we can have an institution that can decide when it's okay to prevent certain types of speech.
I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that any kind of speech should be stifled, and I think saying that, oh, it should be stifled because it radicalizes people, and then these people that are radicalized are gonna do crazy things. That's like, you know, slippery slope. You're going
let me
step by
ask you
step.
a philosophical argument, okay? What if there was a prominent online movement, we don't have to name any names here, but what if there was a prominent online movement that was disseminating certain types of rhetoric? That rhetoric has started to show up in the manifestos of terrorists that have been acting all over the world. People are starting to take action on account of the very legal invocation of free speech that you see from this online movement. And you know somehow, let's say prophetically, that if things continue as they are without any type of ulterior intervention, there will be a fascist takeover of the country that you live in, and all free speech will be silenced. Would you
is that people who
stop
read
them?
Yeah, no, I would not stop them from writing whatever the hell they want.
Even if you knew that them doing so would eventually lead to the destruction of all free speech?
Well, in that hypothetical, you're already assuming that's what's going to happen. But in my opinion, someone can write a manifesto, you know, like taking it in real world terms. Someone can write whatever the hell they want. People aren't going to suddenly start committing violent acts.
They do, though. Do you think wait, out of curiosity, do you think incitement to violence should be illegal?
For person only if it's directly like a straightforward cause and effect. Like, okay, you're telling somebody kill them, but not when you do like, you know, all these steps removed. Oh, they're saying bad things. These bad things get people thinking the wrong way. And then maybe one of those people is going to go crazy and shoot up a school.
So,
or
but
whatever,
that's
you know.
so that's completely circumnavigatable then. What you're essentially saying is the only time it's illegal to incite violence is when the person doing so is stupid enough to implicate themselves by directly calling for a specific person to incite violence. However, if you have a YouTube channel and you start saying stuff like, it's time for us to rise, it's time for us, it's time for the day of the rope, for the white race to reclaim its homeland, and for the race traders and the brown and the what have you folk to hang from lampposts, but you don't specify any particular date, time, person, that you think should be legal?
Just in generally, like if I wanted to say, oh, lynch all black people, yeah, that should be legal to say.
Okay, I mean, I strongly disagree. The reason why there are laws against incitement to violence right now is because we've kind of recognized that, like, usually the incitation of violence isn't as simple as just like one person. It's not like Charles Manson. Like, you don't just tell one person to go commit a crime. It's usually about disseminating rhetoric that leads to stochastic terrorism or to the implementation of certain political policies that end up hurting people. I care a lot about freedom of speech, so I care about stopping things that are going to hurt freedom of speech. I care about life, so I want to stop things that will hurt life. That doesn't just begin and end when a person picks up a gun. There are other things that happen beforehand, perhaps times at which stopping it would be more effective than had they picked up a gun, where I think we can intervene and make, a positive change.
Well, like I said before, the issue is that you're suddenly looking 5 steps ahead and deciding, oh, well, this is going to lead to that, is going to lead to that, is going to lead to that. Like, to me, it's just, there's no one who could really just know for a fact or decide, that's, oh, this is going to lead to violence or whatever when it's five steps removed.
No, political theorists have known for a long time what leads to what. Nobody should have been surprised by the Charlottesville incident. Nobody should have been surprised by what happened at Christchurch. These are all very natural reactions to Lauren Southern, for example, with the Great Replacement like rhetoric that she used. That was came up specifically in the manifesto of the Christchurch shooter. That one's pretty specific, easily to trace. We know what leads people to making certain political decisions. Hold on, let me close my window. Car alarm went off. Sorry. Yeah. So, yeah, for me, like, I just think it's a little bit naive to act as though I want to bring about a society that has the best of all possible worlds. I want a good society, one that functions well. I don't think a society functions well if it doesn't have a natural defense mechanism against things like fascism. Fascism is a plague that eats away at societies. It makes them worse. I don't really think it's that unreasonable to say, like, hey, if you've built a political apparatus oriented entirely around the dissemination of hate and misinformation, it's probably reasonable that, like, something be done about that. It should be noted, by the way, I'm not advocating for the government to take any steps against this. I support the freedom of speech, the First Amendment, as it exists now. I'm mostly talking about censorship, like with YouTube or Twitter or what have you.
Well, okay, if you could have control of YouTube, would you just close like Sargon's channel or Steven Crowder? Would you just shut them down?
I would obliterate them. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. Unquestionably. These people commit TOS violations every fucking video they do. Even Steven Crowder, who plays way closer to the vest than Sargon, can't go a single video without doing some sort of 2-minute fucking, Amos and Andy skit on, like, Chinese people with their buck teeth and slant eyes, or black people with their big lips and silly voices. Like, he consistently violates the TOS. I think they have every justification in the world to go ahead and...
Putting the TOS aside, just talking about free speech, I think I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that you would shut down even a person that goes on YouTube and starts talking about, how much he hates N-words or whatever.
But it doesn't bring about a better world.
Speech isn't violence, and that's what I hate about the left, is that they keep equating speech to violence.
Speech is absolutely violence.
Like, maybe you could...
Well, some forms of speech. Obviously not all forms of speech. This is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, someone screaming fire in a movie theater, or someone saying, hey, please kill X person. Yeah, I would agree, that's violence, but... Just talking in general...
Wait, why that totally arbitrary distinction? What's the difference between saying, you all need to kill this group, and somebody saying, we, the white race, need to kill this group? What's the difference between those two things?
Yeah, it's simple. Because people are allowed to decide their opinion upon hearing whatever stupid thing they see on... Just like, someone could go to your channel and be won over by your leftist rhetoric or whatever. And like, yeah, so to me,
Wait,
I feel like
what does that have to do with anything? Everyone can respond however they want to what they hear. What does that have to do with anything? What's the difference between
yeah, so,
those
so
two
you're
things?
kind of you're basically giving this attitude where it's like, yeah, I'm smart enough to know crowd is full of shit. The masses are dumb. They could be brainwashed. So we need to shut this down, or else they might be
You're still not answering. You're
convinced.
still not answering my question. Everyone is capable of being brainwashed by any position. That's just how human beings seem to be. What is the difference to you between saying you guys need to kill black people and saying we, the white race, need to kill black people?
Um, because one is just a general,
But they lead
like
to the
one is
same
an
outcome.
idea. One is an idea. The other is an order.
Wait. It's not an order though. Like they could just say no to the order. Both of them lead effectively to the same outcome.
Well, if somebody goes on Twitter and says, "I think Trump should be killed," someone should do it. Even that I wouldn't say is problematic, or like it shouldn't be suppressed. Only if the only instances of violence that I would disagree with, or of speech that I would disagree with, is just a direct incitement.
Yeah, but why? It leads to the same outcomes in both cases. Regardless of what wording you
because
use, the impetus there is exactly the same.
no, because when somebody says we should lynch all black people, that's a thing that people can decide to do.
Wait,
or
but they
not.
can't. But they can if they're ordered to as well. What that has nothing to do with it. It's not as though when somebody says something in a commanding tone that you're obligated to do it. In both cases, whether they're saying it directly or indirectly, you still make the choice.
But yeah, the
So,
difference is that I only find free speech or inciting violence with speech problematic if there's a credible, direct cause and effect.
all of those have already been established. We're literally seeing language invented by certain YouTubers popping up in the manifestos of terrorists.
I
That has
completely
already been
disagree.
established.
I feel someone like Sargon would look at people doing violent things and he would look at it with disgust.
I don't that's irrelevant to me. I don't care what they think about it. Much in the same way the law doesn't particularly care, like whether or not like you accidentally or deliberately hit that pedestrian. Well, it does, but it's bad either way. No, I don't really care. The language he disseminates, the rhetoric he uses, has certain outcomes, and those outcomes lead to violence. They lead to harassment. They lead to
You're
the
stating that
silencing
as
of
if
other
it's a
people's free
fact, but
speech.
it's
No, it is a fact. This isn't like hard political theory. Like it seems to me like you're only interested in putting the pieces together if it's as simple as this person's holding a gun, they pull the trigger, the bullet goes into another person, we can see the chain, bullet from person to gun to person holding the gun. But in reality, if we're talking about like really big important philosophical issues like freedom of speech, we can't just limit it to like that base of discourse. We have to be willing to consider the possibility that there are indirect ways that people can affect massive amounts of harm, and we have to consider with some legitimacy whether or not it's valuable to curtail that. So,
well,
do you
really
think
quick.
YouTube should have a TOS?
Well, let me just address the chat really quickly. I'm reading the chat, and I just want to say,
Yeah.
I am not a fan of Sargon. I watched like 2 of his videos in the past couple months. I've watched every single one of Vaush's videos, or rather, listen to it. I download them and listen to them. But so yeah, this is not coming from a position of like bad faith or anything. But sorry, to address your question, can you repeat the last part? I
Do you
lost track
believe
of
that
the last
YouTube
question.
should have a TOS?
No.
Okay. So you think that you should be able to do anything you want on YouTube as long as it's not illegal?
There should be barriers to prevent, adult-rated content from reaching children. But aside from that, I don't think there should be any barriers as long as what you're doing is illegal.
Sure. So what if it was found that any website that doesn't have a TOS invariably devolves into a bunch of white nationalists, hate posting nonstop, threatening, doxing, brigading other content creators, and then
So you're kind of talking about like Poll, for example?
I'm talking about literally every place on the internet that doesn't have a strict terms of service. all of them end up turning out the exact same way. Because the people who are being barred from other services due to their TOS requirements are then forced onto those platforms. And what that invariably leads to is not only a degradation of the platform, but also harm to the other people on that platform. Do you think that a restaurant should be able to kick out a customer if they start acting unruly in a way that isn't necessarily illegal?
Only if somebody feels physically in danger.
Wait, if you own a restaurant and there's somebody in that restaurant who comes in smeared in shit and hollering about the end times, you don't think you should be able to remove them?
Or, you're right. Let me rephrase that. Like, only if they're disrupting other people's ability to enjoy, the contents of the restaurant.
Well, that's kind of an arbitrary standard, too. What if white people, racist white folk, are in the restaurant and a black person comes in? What if they find being in the presence of a black person disrupts their ability to enjoy their time at the restaurant?
Well, that would be up to the restaurant owner. Well,
so you think the restaurant owner should be able to kick black people out if it makes their white patrons more comfortable?
No, I would say that's... First of all, I'm pretty sure that would be illegal, wouldn't it?
It would be illegal, but we're talking about philosophy here. Do you think that they should be able to do that? I don't really care what is or isn't legal, after all. If we're trying to decide what is or is not philosophically justifiable, we kind of build our law around the philosophical justification. We don't really, look at law and then use it to decide what's right.
Okay, can you rephrase the basic question that you're asking again?
Yeah, do you think that a restaurant owner should be able to kick out a black person if the racist white patrons don't like being around a black person?
I would say in that situation, when it comes to basic human rights, that would be the white person infringing on the black person's right to freedom of movement or his freedom in general.
Do you think that people who are smeared in shit, who are yelling about the end times, should have freedom of movement as well?
No, because they would disrupt everyone's ability to eat.
But the black person is also disrupting the ability of the white patrons to eat, because the white patrons are racist. There might be another ulterior condition that we're trying to use to determine whether or not it's acceptable to ban people from the establishment.
Okay, well, I think just from a basic human rights level, there is a difference between kicking out a black person or kicking out someone smeared in shit. The difference being that the black person didn't infringe on anybody else's personal space or their ability to enjoy the meal or anything.
Okay.
So,
well, I mean, they do, but you're arguing that that's an unjustified belief. That even if the black person is disrupting the white people's meal because the white people are racist, that doesn't justify their perspective on the issue.
Sorry, say that again?
So what you're arguing is that even though both the black person and the shit-covered person are disruptive to the patrons, you argue it's okay to kick out the person smeared in shit, but not the black person, because it's acceptable for a person to be black. They have a right to participate in sort of the public forum, but a person smeared in shit has violated the social contract in some way, and they do not have the same right or expectation to decent service if they go outside.
Yeah, that sounds good. Phrased it way better than I could.
Okay, yeah, cool. But you acknowledge that being smeared in shit and yelling about the end times, both of these things are not illegal, nor necessarily are they incitements to violence. They're unpleasant, but they're ultimately legal and actually rather harmless, as all things go.
I'm pretty sure you could be arrested for disrupting the peace, couldn't you?
It really depends on the extent to which you're doing it. But that's an interesting question. I'm not really talking about law. Do you think it should be...
You just mentioned law. You talked about law right now.
Well, I'm saying that philosophical determinations don't really consider law because you base law around philosophy, not the other way around. But if we're speaking strictly about what is right or what's moral, do you think it's okay for people who are disrupting the public good to be arrested? Like if a person's out in the street just screaming at people, not insults or threats or anything, just yelling at people.
I think there's a clear line between speaking and either yelling, because that could be a physical kind of disruption, and what was the other one? Being like smelling. That's more of a physical thing. So yeah, I think if somebody is calmly speaking, they could say whatever the hell they want.
Okay,
in
but
my
wait,
opinion.
but I'm interested earlier. You do believe that a restaurant owner should be able to kick out a person smeared in shit, yelling incoherently?
Yeah,
Okay. Why?
because the smell to me is a form of minor assault. Like
Okay.
you're assaulting their senses, basically.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I agree with that. So you believe that even though it's not literal physical assault, like the shit smeared person isn't tackling anyone or anything, there is a type of violence associated with them being smeared in shit because they are negatively they are in a empirical way, they are hurting the people around them. It's kind of in a silly way, but it's true though. Nobody wants to go around smelling other people who smell like shit. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you agree then that private businesses should have a right to not host the services or content of people who they believe are odorious or are making less pleasant the experiences of other people.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in agreement then that it's perfectly okay for YouTube and other sites to have a TOS because in doing so, they're fulfilling the exact same principle. A person who comes into YouTube as a white nationalist, disseminating rhetoric about white nationalism and how Jews and black people are bad, may not be, in the strictest sense, violating a law, but they are making things hell for everyone else. And there is sort of an injurious element to existing on a platform alongside somebody who believes you need to be lynched for your skin color.
It's just like Tyler the Creator with his infamous tweet. Just close your eyes, turn off the screen. That does not compare at all.
Interesting. Wait, so how? You realize that Tyler the Creator got made fun of for that tweet because it was stupid, right?
No,
Like,
I thought it was perfectly apt. He said, "How's cyberbullying real? Just turn that shit up."
yeah, people made
And
fun.
sure,
Yeah, that was made fun of.
Sure, it's true that it has it still has an effect, because it's
And I
happening.
think he
and it makes you
redacted it
feel
later
that.
too because he knew it was also stupid.
Okay, well, I still stand by the fact that something on a computer screen, an idea that's just on your screen, that's not physical. That's not assault. That's not something that you have a right to shut down.
You can just leave the restaurant. If you don't like the shit-smelling man who's yelling a lot, you can just leave the restaurant, can't you?
Yeah, but it would be in the restaurant owner's interest to
And
keep their patrons,
it would be in
so they have a
YouTube's
right.
and it would be in YouTube's interest to keep their patrons as well.
I have a bigger issue with YouTube because they're essentially a monopoly.
Well, wait,
So
no,
that's-
we're moving. Wait, we're moving to a different argument now. You agree then, fundamentally, that there is some legitimacy to the argument that YouTube has a right to expel patrons of its service that end up hurting the experience of others. Do you not?
Does YouTube have a right? I think they shouldn't have a right because of the fact that they're so, because they're essentially a monopoly. So I am in favor of the government controlling YouTube.
Well, we've moved to a
instance.
completely different argument here. So you realize that even if a person is walking around free on their own on the streets, not using any private services, as you so wisely pointed out, they can still be arrested for disrupting the public good. So even if YouTube was nationalized and turned into a public service, that wouldn't necessarily mean the government couldn't have their own TOS. Hell, government-owned websites sometimes have comment sections that have their own TOS. Even if a website has is owned, the BBC, for example, is not, well, it's not technically a government wing, but it's a publicly owned institution, or at least the funding comes from the public. And they have their own rules in terms of service when it comes to, participating in their comment sections and chat. Just because you're operating from within a public framework doesn't mean that you can behave however you want.
Well, if the government does that, then I disagree. It's as simple as that. I just think that, first of all, YouTube should be a public service, and secondly, people should be allowed to say anything that they want on it. Speech is not violence.
But you just argue there's a kind of violence to smelling bad near people, but you don't, which can't actually kill anyone. But speaking about the need to engage in a race war can. it can lead to violence. Smelling like shit can't. On its own, it is utterly harmless, if unpleasant. This is not the case with white nationalist rhetoric.
It all boils down to you looking at a computer screen, deciding what you want to watch, what you want to hear, and if you don't like it, close the window.
So if I had closed the window, Christchurch wouldn't have happened? If only they had just been a little bit more diligent with their internet usage, they wouldn't have been Christchurched?
Well, where do you think would have stopped Christchurch, in your opinion? Like,
the Christchurch shooter named the people he was radicalized by.
Well,
yeah. There's a direct link. This isn't indirect. It's not ephemeral. It's not intangible.
No,
people respond to propaganda.
You're making it sound like this was an innocent, normal guy until he got radicalized.
No. You can't shunt it off like that. You can't make the argument like, oh, they're not affected by radicalization, and then, like, when it's clear they are because they name the people who influence them, you back off and say, well, we don't actually know for a fact, even though he directly named them, and named the rhetoric they used, and named the ideas they came up with, and said they inspired him to engage. You can't do that. It's pretty clear that they led to this. You're trying to impose a level of abstraction that isn't there. Political theory is pretty clear on this. People respond stochastically to radicalization online. This is how ISIS does recruitment. You don't like ISIS? Then do you have a problem then with the fact that they engage in the exact same kind of recruitment tactics that the alt-right does? They post online to forums that they know are largely populated with lonely, sexually frustrated, emasculated young men, and then they try to talk about how the only way they're going to be able to get the girl is by repopulating the glorious caliphate. It's exactly the same. And I disagree with that too, and I don't think ISIS recruitment videos have a place on YouTube.
Okay, you kind of lost me in that tangent, but all right. Getting back to my basic point.
Wait, but can you respond to the point I made though?
Can you rephrase it in a little simpler way, because you really kind of went off?
Yeah, there isn't like this. There isn't this like unfathomable abstraction between radicalization and people being radicalized. ISIS has literally, you could see the territory that ISIS has carved out of the world from the International Space Station. And that territory was carved by young men radicalized by rhetoric nearly identical to the rhetoric that is used by folks like Sargon of Akkad. There isn't abstraction here. This is just how it works.
Okay, I think in the real world, in the country that we live in, there's a big difference when it comes to free speech and the fact that anybody can go watch Vaush, become a lefty and all that, or go the other way. Everyone has a free choice. Now, in a place like the Middle East, yeah, people get radicalized because they already have a majority, like a peer pressure. Everyone thinks that way.
No. This distinction doesn't exist. There's peer pressure here too, and over there in the Middle East, they make the active choice to engage in whatever ISIS nonsense they engage in, and they do so because they were exposed to that propaganda. It's exactly the same.
Their whole culture enables that.
No. You don't get to look at two analogous situations and say that it's different because Muslims are different. It's not. No,
I'm not saying racially different. I'm saying their culture is different. You said yourself that you condemn, that you don't like Muslim culture.
Wait. I don't like our culture. Like, even slightly. Our culture is disgusting and barbaric.
Okay, but you made the point that some cultures are better than others.
I think there are some elements of cultures that are better than others, but that doesn't mean that there's not an analogous situation here. It's exactly the same. Are you okay with YouTube keeping ISIS recruitment videos up?
Yeah.
Okay, so even if these ISIS recruitment videos got a huge number of views, and you see tons of people in the comments talking about how they're going to behead all the infidels, and it's time to keep the sluts in rags, and it's time to impregnate brown women to bring back the caliphites and stuff, and you could see that there was direct harm being done for the perpetuation of this video's uptime, you would be okay with that continuing to exist?
I think anyone who would engage in violence already
that's what you're saying is factually incorrect. On a political science, sociological, and psychological level, people aren't just genetically predisposed to committing violence. People commit violence because they're exposed to certain environmental stimuli.
Just the way they grew up.
Wait. The way you grow up can be watching ISIS recruitment videos, or watching Sargon of Akkad, or watching Paul Joseph Watson. Environment is what shapes a person's personality more than anything else. If part of that environment is those videos, it's more likely they're going to go that way.
well, you have a choice. It's not
Wait,
like
everyone always has a choice. That's irrelevant. What matters is
not
the
really.
outcome.
There's a big difference between growing up in the U.S. and
You've
growing
pivoted.
up.
You've pivoted again. You're acting as though people in like the Middle East like are just like they have no choice but to become ISIS fighters. That's
No,
not
it's not
true.
that they have no choice. It's that this is shoved down their throats.
No, it's not.
Not
Wait,
the,
wait.
not the
So
ISIS
is
part,
wait.
but
So is it
just the
here?
general
Wait, I'm sorry.
culture.
No, no, it's not. ISIS isn't like it's not like the whole Middle East was ISIS and then they just
Well, I'm not
spontaneously
just talking
decided.
about ISIS, but I'm talking about cultivating the ideologies and the beliefs that could further push someone.
Yeah,
into
you mean like
becoming an
fascism and
ISIS
white supremacy, which have been integral to America's political culture for the past 300 years? Yeah, I agree. Environment shapes people's personality, and part of that white supremacy is the shit we leave up on YouTube. And part of their Arab supremacy and militant Islamicism comes in the form of the internet radicalization that ISIS people like produce deliberately. What you're arguing for is to make the world worse for no reason. The world
trying
isn't
to-
made better for the existence of these videos. It leads to things like ISIS. ISIS would not exist if they had only had YouTube and its TOS as an option to recruit people.
I just have a problem with you. Kind of, it belies like a general feeling that everyone else is inferior when you say, "Oh, I'm too smart."
Wait, what is that? When did I ever say I'm like too smart? What
No,
is
not
that?
literally. I'm just saying that's kind of the impression I get.
How?
Because you make everyone else out to be so easily swayed.
Everyone is easily swayed. Everyone is a product of their environment. You're the one who just said that Arab men didn't have a choice to get into ISIS because their culture influenced them.
That's when it's your entire world. In the U.S., it's not like
This
that.
is a distinction that does
can't
not
make a
exist. The
comparison.
entire world of the United States is based on white supremacy and xenophobia. That's been the case for as long as this country has
You're
been
just
around.
inciting panic, and that's
Wait,
part of the problem I have with.
wait. Calm down. I'm not inciting panic. You're the one who's not capable of processing just basic sociological truths. You're trying to enforce some sort of distinction here, something that makes us better than them, something that makes the Arab world weak and easily susceptible to that propaganda, but something that makes us specific and distinct and strong. It's not true. The Nazis were popular here in the United States of America before they weren't. For a decade, Adolf Hitler was one of the most popular foreign political leaders because he was strong and because he was white and because he liked being strong and white
That's
and
all
because
fine,
America
but-
responded to it. This country isn't special. People here are radicalized.
No, your issue is that you can't point at history and then be like, well, that means this is hard. That's not how our country is now. It doesn't matter what was before. Yeah, things
It's
were
still
bad
that way.
before.
It's still
No,
this way.
That's where I take issue with your perspective. Is you're making it sound like we're gonna.
Do you have any
ever
idea
act-
how many times you've pivoted to a different talking point over the course of this conversation? Do you I feel like I would need like a topographic expert to go back over this and find all the times where rather than dealing with a point I presented to you, you move to the goalpost like further down the road so you could talk about
I don't
something.
think I'm moving the goalposts. I mean, my original point was actually going to be more about the issue, the whole punch a Nazi thing, and then we really went off into specific ISIS territory.
Yeah, so it is a fact of the matter that the existence of those radicalizing elements hurts people. There is a direct correlation between the existence of those radicalizing elements and people engaging in actual real-world harm, which can range from terrorism to the implementation of political policies that hurt people, particularly minorities. With that being said, I think, because I care about people, I do not want these policies to exist, so I want to stop them from being implemented. And because I care about free speech, I want to hamstring people who would seek to destroy our society and replace it with one that does not have free speech. I advocate fundamentally and to a better degree for both of the things you claim to care about. But
You're
your
still being the
ideological
arbiter
obsession...
of what's acceptable and what's not. That's
No,
the
wait,
problem.
no, I'm not. I'm not saying that I want to be Grand Führer of America and personally take down all the videos. I'm saying I want to
But
responsible...
that's what you're trying to accomplish
No,
in a small way.
not. Do you think I'm going to be like president?
No, I'm saying that you're advocating for that. Doesn't matter who's in.
I'm not advocating for me to be in charge of America.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about what you're saying. Like just.
Wait, you agree
what
that
you want
police
to
can make
happen.
you agree police can make the decision when it's okay to subvert one's life to protect life in general? What's the difference here? Can we not have an institution that does the same when it comes to the violence inflicted by certain types of speech?
there's nobody in the world who can correctly
Why?
identify.
No, wait. No, wait. Yes, we can. It's really,
Nobody
really
can
simple.
look into the future and just say this is going to be violence. This is not going to be
Nobody
violence.
can know perfectly. Wait, you can never know perfectly as a police officer whether or not it's okay to take a person's life. But we understand that it's preferable to sometimes make mistakes than to never, ever try.
Okay, well, taking your example, I would say if a black guy is running away, for example, the police officer shouldn't shoot him.
Yeah,
But if
we can
he
make
poses a
general
clear threat-
distinctions. Wait, are you saying that you're capable, if you were a police officer, to empirically determine with 100% accuracy when and when not it's okay to open fire?
No, it's impossible.
Okay, wait, but I agree, but we do it anyway. So obviously, just because we can't form a perfect, axiomatically, epistemologically flawless distinction between times we should and should not pull the trigger, doesn't mean we shouldn't sometimes pull the trigger. Likewise, just because we don't know 100% how the effects of speech will turn out, doesn't mean there aren't some forms of speech that should be curtailed.
Yeah, but who's going to decide?
Well, the police decide for the...
agency?
I mean, right now, YouTube is doing, like, a decent enough job. They could... Oh, shit. They could do more. But for the most part, like, YouTube does an acceptable job. You can't post a video saying, like, I'm gonna kill all N-words. N-word, N-word, N-word. I'm gonna murder them all. Can't do that on YouTube. That's a good start.
What if we flip the situation so that we live in a world where online media outlets and sites like YouTube are really right-wing, and they do the exact same thing and suppress
they would already
left-wing channels.
They would already do that. That's the thing. Right-wingers, when they get power, just hurt us. They do that on their own. They aren't. It's not like they wait for a justification on it. It's not like a fascist is going to be like, now that I've attained power, let's see, did the lefties treat me nicely? Should I be nice to them too? They will always hurt us.
Okay, you're going off into like really general, just shit about all right is bad, it's going to violence.
Wait, no. That's what happens when fascists take power.
Okay, but who are the fascists that are taking power?
The Republican Party is presently pretty fascist, but they don't have control over YouTube, to my knowledge.
The thing is that you're arguing from a perspective where you just assume you're right. If we, I'm
not. This is the same non-argument I hear from everyone who doesn't like dealing with complicated philosophical issues, and it's very, very strange and very, very frustrating. I'm not arguing I'm perfect. I'm not arguing I'm always right. I'm arguing that sometimes it's very easy to see certain types of speech lead to a tremendous amount of harm. It stifles other people's free speech if you allow people to engage in certain types of speech. It leads to empirical real-world harm. If we can curtail these things, we can improve the world. And given the fact that people like me have been saying that people like Lauren Southern have been harming discourse for ages, and now we literally see terrorist attacks happening on account of their rhetoric, it's pretty clear that we have at least some handle on what is or is not correct when it comes to this.
All right, hold your horse. You're talking like a minute for everything I say. Like, give me a break. Here's my point. If we live in a world where YouTube had the exact same policies, but it was politically flipped, wouldn't you then say that you would argue against YouTube's right to do that?
Wait, it depends on what they were doing. If YouTube was controlled by right-wing people, but they tried to target the same basic types of behavior that I would, then no, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
You wouldn't have a problem with them? Or what if they suppress people who just talked about leftist propaganda?
I'm not advocating that you suppress everyone who talks about conservative propaganda. Are you saying are you asking me whether or not I would approve if conservative people would do something different?
You just said you would shut down Steven Crowder and obliterate.
Yeah, because they constantly harass and promote racism and xenophobia, not because they're conservatives. Don't you think it's weird?
Name one channel that you wouldn't obliterate that is still right wing.
Hey, remember when Twitter said that they couldn't roll out an anti-Nazi ban bot because it would end up targeting too many Republican officials? That's how I feel right now, okay? Right now, most Republicans are fascists. What conservatives? I don't know. Is Crowder conservative?
Hold on.
Yeah, Hunter Avallone. There we go.
Okay, I don't know who that is. But even still, like, it just goes to show that...
Wait, no, it doesn't. the principles that I'm outlining here are consistent. If you advocate for bigotry or harassment, I think that should be something that's against TOS. It's not my
I'm
fault.
looking at chat. Shoe on head is not right wing.
It's
These
not.
people are absurd.
It's not my fault. Well, compared to me, it's not my fault that conservatives relentlessly engage in targeted discriminatory behavior. That's kind of their shtick,
Okay, so you can name one channel, but let's be real here. You're basically
Wait. You realize you're not mounting.
Obliterate 90%.
You're not. Yeah.
Of
No
the right-wing
shit.
channels on
Yeah,
YouTube.
they're horrible. Like, you're not. This isn't a counter argument. Yeah. My entire channel is based on the idea that conservative arguments are fucking terrible. It's not just that they're wrong, it's that they're fascists. They want to hurt people. Conservatism is fundamentally about destroying people, about preserving and promoting hierarchy. The fact that a lot of conservatives would get axed in my preferred TOS system is A, not an argument against what I'm advocating for, B, not because they're conservative, but rather because they are bigots, and 3, not an argument against the idea of implementing a TOS to begin with, and 4, irrelevant when it comes to what they would do if they were in a similar position. If they also targeted harassment and bigotry, I would be okay with the TOS policy of a right-wing YouTube. If they started just targeting people for being, gay? Then yeah, I would take an issue with that.
Okay, so but you're still agreeing with, or you're saying that you, in a flip society, you wouldn't agree with YouTube's TOS.
Wait, no, I just wait. Are you listening to anything that I'm saying?
No, wait. Let me be clear. You said if someone is gay and they took down the channel, you would be against that. Okay?
Yes, I think it's bad to target people for being gay.
Okay, so we're just talking generally about the power that YouTube has. So
wait, no, just because I say it's okay for the police to shoot like a serial killer doesn't mean I think it's okay for you to shoot a baby in a crib. The tool and who it is applied to matters. I'm not advocating that YouTube should be able to just ban anyone for any reason. I'm saying you should ban people for certain reasons, and I've outlined those reasons. I don't care who enacts that.
What you're saying is people I disagree with, essentially.
No, I disagree with lots of people on lots of things. I'm saying bigotry and harassment and incitements to violence.
But a lot of people don't think that certain things are bigotry and harassment.
That's not an argument. The fact that other people are wrong isn't an argument.
Yeah, you're saying for a fact what's wrong and what's right to put on YouTube.
Of course, I think I'm right. I wouldn't advocate for a position if I thought I was wrong. Obviously, I think I'm right, but I'm not advocating that everyone I disagree with be banned off YouTube. Huh?
It doesn't matter. What I'm advocating for is that it doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. YouTube shouldn't overstep its bounds and start banning people for talking.
Wait. So it's not overstepping its bounds. Why would you morally load that? The YouTube is currently a private business and it has a terms of service. It has the right to ban people.
Well, we went over that. I think ideally YouTube should be...
which would make the platform worse, yes. Every platform that doesn't have a TOS ends up turning to a shithole because, as it turns out, you want to discourage some types of antisocial behavior to maintain decorum and civility on that platform. That just seems to be a fact of the matter. You realize, no one's right is being infringed here. I'm fighting for the right to prevent people from being genocided. I'm fighting for the right for people to not have to go online and be bombarded with harassment and calls for their death. You're fighting for the right for those people to continue to exist on those platforms.
Sorry, I talked over you for a second. What was the last thing you said?
You're fighting for the right for those people to continue existing on those platforms, even though all they do is harm.
So Crowder was calling Carlos Maza, what was he calling him, a fairy?
Let's be a little queer, fairy, what have you, yeah. Which violates the YouTube TOS concerning harassment and discrimination based on one's sexuality.
Okay, well I think that's a load of bullshit. I think that should not have been done because...
Wait, his channel wasn't banned.
Well, I mean, he got in some sort of trouble, didn't he?
His channel was demonetized. He broke the rules. Okay. You just seem to have a problem with, rules, being implemented.
Well, here's the problem is that...
You just want to make, society worse. I don't get it. You're not providing any philosophical justifications for any of your arguments. You're just saying, no matter what I say or how many arguments you provide, you're just well, I don't think they should be able to do that. I think society should be worse, and I can't explain why. Why?
Well, here's the thing. Let's use that Carlos Maza example as a way to explain everything more broadly. I think Crowder should not have gotten in trouble for saying that, and I'm assuming you think that was correct, right? Or that it was correct for him to be demonetized.
Well, he should have been banned, but sure, a demonetization is, I guess, a nice consolation prize.
Okay, so that's exactly the issue that I have. Is
Well,
that,
yeah, I know you have an issue with that. Why?
okay, let me say it. You're saying somebody teasing someone and calling him a lesbian.
Wait. That's not teasing. That's like saying somebody is like an uppity Negro is teasing. It's just homophobia.
Okay, I don't even care. Okay, use that example. It doesn't even matter. That's not. You're extrapolating. That if you're saying it's okay for that instance to result in someone being demonetized.
Yes, harassing somebody in a homophobic way. Yes, I think.
But,
yeah.
Well, it just everything. It feels like everything that you're justifying is 5 steps removed from actual violence.
You still can't. Wait, no, you still can't. Wait, that has nothing to do with violence. I just don't think you should be able to harass people on YouTube. Certainly not be homophobic about it. Actually, I guess harassment can be in a constructive sense can be acceptable. It was mostly the homophobia. If Crowder had just been making jokes about Carlos Maza, like insulting Carlos Maza, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I guess I would disagree with it, but I don't want to ban everything I disagree with.
I could point out a million examples of something that was someone who got in trouble. I don't want
to go over every single invocation of YouTube's rules. You still can't give me a single justification why you should not have a TOS on YouTube. It makes the world a better place if you impede some forms of speech.
Okay, that's exactly the issue. Is that, in your opinion, it's as simple as that.
No. I've spent the past hour explaining to you the myriad ways, sociologically, psychologically, and political science, how it leads to worse things. It's not just an in my opinion thing. This is a fact of the matter. You could go into any university in America and find the political science department and try and say, well, there's no actual association between the consuming radicalizing propaganda and being radicalized. It's just their choice.
But
and you would get laughed out of every single one of those. It's not a matter of my opinion, and it has nothing to do with me thinking I'm always right. It is just a fact.
But calling Carlos Maza falls under that umbrella in your
calling
opinion.
Carlos Maza what?
Gay.
He didn't call him gay. He called him lesbian queer. He made fun of him for being gay.
Yeah, I don't care about that, but
you keep minimizing it, which makes me think that you have an ulterior motive here.
No, I don't care if he called him the F-bomb or whatever. Even that would, in my opinion, would be acceptable, but my problem is that you're saying, oh, here you can look at the political history, all this stuff that led to violence.
Why should they allow homophobic harassment? Why should it be allowed on YouTube? Why should that be allowed?
Because it's harmless.
It's objectively not harmless. You know who else knows this? YouTube. Do you think YouTube doesn't know what happens on their own platform? YouTube knows if they didn't implement a TOS, then less gay people would come to the site because it would be filled with vitriolic homophobia. Wait. We have to move on from this because you are factually incorrect in your assertion that there is no harm that is brought about through bigoted language. You're just wrong. We can argue other things. If you wanted to make that... See, this is the argument you could have made. You could have said, sure, some types of speech do harm, like any reasonable adult would believe, but I think promoting the principle of free speech is more important than the harm done by misusing it sometimes. That would be a reasonable position to take. But you can't even accept you can't even bite the bullet on the simplest argument that you would have to respond to from your position. You can't even accept the fact that some types of speech do tremendous amounts of harm. I feel like this is to me like almost like axiomatic. Like this is something that it's presuppositional. I would assume that we would come into the discussion both believing this. Your belief that it's harmless is factually wrong. If you want to move forward from that,
you're dodging.
I'm dodging
the issue. Yeah. Here's the thing. My problem, like I said before, is the slippery slope fallacy, where you say you take one little thing, this should be banned because it leads to X, which leads to X, which leads to X. And yeah, you could say whatever you said about political scientists that can determine how fascist regimes.
Well, slippery slope is a fallacy, right?
I know. I'm accusing you of that.
No, you're invoking it. You're invoking the slippery slope fallacy by saying that if we penalize any type of speech, we have to penalize all of it, or it's going to lead to that eventually. It's a fallacy. You're invoking a fallacy.
That's not really what I was trying to say. I mean, I was just saying you can't... All this stuff you're arguing about how speech leads to fascism
Not all speech.
That's
No, wait. Not all speech leads to fascism. Fascists
Yeah, okay.
advocating for fascist arguments makes it more likely fascism will happen. Much in the same way that me, a leftist, advocating for leftist arguments makes it more likely leftism will happen. Trust me, as somebody whose job is oriented around convincing people of my political positions, I promise you, we have an outcome. We have an impact.
Yeah, but the issue is that people are getting banned for stuff that doesn't fall under what you're saying.
I'm not defending any particular YouTube bans. I've been fucking kicked off YouTube for stupid shit before. I'm not arguing about the perfection of their current policy.
If you can call Sargon a smooth brain idiot, whatever you said a lot of nasty things about people. Like, can you?
Are you seriously about to argue that being racist and saying a person is dumb are the same thing?
I think you could make a joke like, or whatever you want to call it, harassment, like calling someone a queer fairy. That would be
homophobic harassment, not just harassment.
Okay, but it's okay to be homophobic as long as you're not like you're acting
no,
like
it's not. That's my argument. It's not. You can't harass people and be homophobic about it.
By the way, I'm not homophobic or I'm not advocating for homophobia.
I don't care what you personally believe. My argument is that you can't. It's not okay.
It's okay for someone to go online and be racist too. It's saying
I'm saying, why do you keep saying that as though you've defended those arguments? You have to you have to argue the position. You can't just make the statement. It's not okay. It's not okay. There should be internet TOSs.
And you know what? Maybe in the most extreme cases, there would be a credible threat.
The bar for legitimacy here is not whether or not an insult is going to lead to that person being shot in their house. Okay, the bar here is that it harms people.
Yeah, we're insulting people. I mean, I'm sure
insulting people. We're being bigoted.
You could have made Sargon feel bad.
I don't care. Sargon of Akkad is not a protected class. I didn't make fun of Sargon for being black.
Well, I don't see the difference in saying.
I know. Wait. Have you seriously been watching me for 4 months and you don't know the difference between insulting a person and being racist against a person? You really can't tell if there are any sort of political or sociological differences between those things?
I'm not talking about what's okay in my personal moral opinion. I'm talking about what should be suppressed and what shouldn't. I think racism and homophobia should not be suppressed.
I'm aware, but it just makes the world worse. And everything you've said in this statement that can be empirically disproven has been empirically disproven. There was a direct connection between advocacy that is homophobic and homophobia. There is a direct connection between fascist propaganda and fascists. If you want to make the argument that these things are okay, it's okay to make the world worse as long as we keep our precious, perfect free speech, even as it leads to less free speech because we're allowing fascists to take over, and then they end up removing free speech, fine, if that's your position. But as a pro-free speech deuterino myself, I recognize that free speech doesn't practically exist unless people are comfortable expressing themselves in a given environment. It's not enough that you're legally able to. If you go out into the public square as a black man back in 1954 and nobody's arresting you but people are booing you and shouting at you, your free speech is being impeded. Even though they have a legal right to do those things, your free speech is only functionally effective in a world in which there are no consequences for the flatline advocacy of your speech. The ability to be comfortable and free on a platform is a component of that. By you just allowing white nationalists or racists or homophobes to just run fucking wild, do you have any idea how many thousands of DMs Carlos Maza got after Steven Crowder would make fun of him? Do you have any idea how difficult it is to advocate for your point when every time you open your mouth, you're getting metaphorical tomatoes fucking thrown at you by an audience of people who have no social obligation to do anything other than be their worst selves online? The world is just made worse, and free speech is made worse when we do not implement simple limits on people's behavior online. Simple. I'm not asking for every conservative to be banned. I'm saying people who spent fucking 40 minutes of video talking about how the white race is on the cusp of extinction and the duplicitous Jew needs to be lynched in order to prevent it from going under the water permanently, I feel like that could probably get a person banned. And maybe there's some ambiguity there, and I don't know the answers on all of these things. But I also don't know when it's okay to execute a person or not on the street. But I do know sometimes cops have to draw their guns. So it's a complicated issue that we have to be willing to contend with the realities of, and not just sit down and like petulant children and say it's wrong anytime you ever take away someone's speech. All right, that's my soliloquy.
Okay, we can. I did want to move on to another point
All right, as
really
long as
quick.
it's quick, because I've got a virus in my
Okay,
Resident Evil
if I could
3
just get
jump all the time.
the last word, I when it comes to that, I just feel it's like you said, it's too ambiguous, and people are starting to like at too small of a level when it comes to what is banned. Like it's not like somebody saying, "Oh, lynch all blacks." It's somebody making a homophobic joke, and I think that's you can't decide. Like you're
If
not
you
the one who
like,
gets to
what do you want me?
decide.
Do you want to like give me specific instances, and I can like rule like a Roman like emperor? Like I give the thumbs up or thumbs down on whether or not it's acceptable. I don't know. I don't know what you mean.
Well, that's the thing is that you're just basing everything off of your personal
No,
opinion.
I'm not. I'm saying that there is philosophical validity to engaging in some of these protections. You realize these protections that I'm advocating for would also hurt some lefties. I'm also okay with like lefties, though I think the circumstances are fundamentally different here. I do think it's acceptable for YouTube to like TOS like lefties who go on screeds about how like whites are terrible, or screeds about how we need to like go out into the streets and start lynching rich people. I do think that's acceptable as well. So I would even be willing to apply this standard to people who share my political interests.
Um, yeah, okay. I feel like I just have the same response as before. I just feel like when it comes to arbitrarily deciding, you just think that you're people who share your opinion and have your views should be the ones to decide. And I'm like, no, you should
I'm not
just
arguing that I be in
admit that
charge
you
of
don't know.
everything.
Not you specifically, but people of that share your opinion.
I'm saying harassment that is bigoted, targeted harassment, prejudice,
Okay, but
bigotry.
you decided people decide what harassment
Yeah, that
is
yes, everyone has to
arbitrarily.
decide everything. You can't. You realize like this isn't an answer to anything. Everything has to be decided by somebody. This is like
And you
arguing like
got
we need to
the
stop
left
climate
goes too
change.
far.
Wait,
That's
wait,
my whole.
then argue with
Getting
what
back to
I
my
have to
point.
say. Stop with this like, well, somebody would have to decide. Yeah, I know. Everyone would have to have something to decide. Like every policy that has ever been implemented by any human has had to be decided by somebody. Like obviously a line gets drawn somewhere.
Yeah, the left goes too far. That's my whole
Okay, that's
point.
the
Is that
argument you've been trying and failing to make this entire time, because all you've been able to say is like it's okay to be racist because
I feel like
racism
it's
is like insulting
subjectively.
people.
Here's the thing: it's subjectively true to say, because like I said at the very beginning, I think there's a clear line between violence and speech, and the left keeps trying to blur that line and equate the
The
two.
left isn't blurring that line. That line hasn't existed in academic discourse for centuries. Nobody unironically believes that. The only people who believe that are like dumb
Okay,
fuck, like libertarian-leaning
it's fine.
people who have no
Okay,
understanding of
I
political
agree. I
theory,
agree.
but all
Let
they...
me just
Okay.
clarify. Um, the the problem is, shit. I lost my train of thought. Um, yeah, basically, when it comes to the left banning or suppressing speech
No,
for the
wait,
sake
nobody... Wait,
of
wait, wait. Why are we talking about the left? I'm just talking about a broad philosophical argument. And what are we talking about banning free speech? Do we need the government? I said at the beginning of this that I want to preserve First
is that
Amendment
everything
rights.
you said is correct in terms of speech can lead to violence.
Everyone believes
That's
everything they say is correct. Why would anyone make an argument they thought was wrong?
I just said everything you said is correct in terms of speech does lead to violence, generally speaking. But you take it like that's only in the most extreme cases, and you take that and then apply it to something that's not appropriate.
Like what?
Someone calling somebody a lesbian queer or whatever.
Wait,
That doesn't fit.
wait. Crowder's shit leads to violence.
Yeah, that's where I disagree. That he
Okay,
can say
wait,
whatever
wait,
the hell
wait.
he
You're
wants.
just wrong. You do realize that Crowder has literally made fun of the children who are locked up in concentration camps on our border, right? He's promoted a fuck ton of incredibly Islamophobic rhetoric. This dude's rhetoric is absolutely hardline fascist. The argument that it like doesn't hurt anyone is ridiculous. He's the single largest conservative content creator on YouTube. He has 4.1 million subscribers. All it took was for him to make a lispy queer joke for thousands of homophobes to dogpile Carlos Maza in his DMs. That's the kind of power he has. He doesn't have to do any call to action. He can just wave his fingers and do a little slant eye bit, and somewhere some Chinese man is going to get 100 DMs from Crowder
Just close
fans.
your eyes, turn off the screen. I mean, seriously, dude.
Okay, you do realize he was
violence.
the person who typed that out was A, made fun of it, for it and then B, retracted it
Whatever.
afterwards, right? The take you're making is so dumb that even the person who made it and was lambasted for making it retracted it later. Nobody believes this anymore. Just close your eyes and turn away. Could I have just closed my eyes and turned away and Christchurch didn't happen? Could I have closed my eyes and turned away and Trump didn't get elected? Wait, really quickly. So, because you seem to think that like the internet is just this fairyland where nothing gets carried over from one side to the other. I don't know if you've ever considered this, but if you spend your time disseminating homophobic propaganda on YouTube, the people who watch and listen to you are going to be made more homophobic in real life too. It's not just online. They don't just stop at the internet and then they get up and they're like, oh, well, that was fun. Now back to believing we're all fundamentally the same, regardless of our sexuality. This distinction between online and in-person advocacy, this is a childlike argument. I can't believe you would disrespect me by making an argument like this.
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing.
Wait, we have to wrap this up. But final points.
It's just a matter of when you say draw the line, you're not drawing the line in the right place. You're drawing it way too far.
You have failed to substantiate any point of yours at any point of this argument. You haven't even made arguments in your favor. All you've said are things that are empirically wrong.
I want to talk about puberty blockers. Do you have time?
Yeah, 10 minutes. What's up? Yeah.
Okay, puberty blockers are bad.
Why?
Because, let me give you a hypothetical. A person who is male, born male, decides they want to become a female when they're a teen.
That's not how it works, but yeah, go for it.
Okay, so they do it with medical professional, whatever, but just ultimately it comes down to the child's opinion about how they feel. So they turn into a female, or they take the puberty blockers so they can eventually transition. And then they change their mind. They're like, never mind, I want to be male. So now this person who wants to be male, wants to present as male, has a smaller penis and smaller height. I'm not even talking about the bone thing. That's like, you could add that in if you want, but like just those two things are permanent, and a person under the age of 18 should not be allowed to do something so permanent. Like, would you agree with somebody 14 years old getting a face tattoo?
First of all, it's not something they do to themselves. It's something they have done to them after a significant, overwhelming amount of medical consultation. Tattoos are not something you have to spend a year in therapy and a long-standing psychiatric practitioner gives like a recommendation for. So these are inapplicable. There are other life-changing surgeries and decisions that young people can make concerning themselves, and that have been accepted for a long time. Huh?
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, well, puberty blockers have been used on cisgender people for decades before they started being used on trans people. And they were done in large part to address androgen difficulties, many of which were not necessarily fatal, but the use of which could lead to permanent physiological changes in their body. So there's that. And additionally, the percentage of people who go through with transitioning or who go through with puberty blockers and then decide to transition is very, very high. With proper medical consultation, so this isn't like you just don't give people puberty blockers, like you don't just throw it at them. With proper medical consultation, the percent, I don't have it in front of me, but it's very, very high. And even that, the long-term consequences of getting off puberty blockers after deciding not to transition are not very large. It's not like you're going to take like an 8-inch cock and turn it into like a 3-inch one or something. We're talking very marginal differences in your height and penis size, which compared to the potential high level of suicidality associated with going through the wrong puberty as a trans person is, I think, a pretty worthwhile trade-off.
There's another issue too.
Oh yeah.
A person who goes through puberty, their mind changes. A lot of the time, a person who's a tomboy, for example, a girl who's a tomboy, goes through puberty, and the act of going through puberty feminizes them and makes them identify as female and present as female. So it's just, there's no way to justify.
Nobody is given puberty blockers because they're a tomboy. Again, you need a lot of medical intervention before you can be.
That's not what I said. All I said was that puberty changes your mind.
Yeah.
So,
that's what. Yeah. Wait. What kind of argument is that? Puberty doesn't change your gender identity. It can change your presentation, or it can help you realize your gender identity. But
when you start getting all that testosterone, or
do you have a source in this claim? Is there like an epidemic Is there like an epidemic of people who take puberty blockers and then they like get off them and don't transition, and then they hit their puberty, and then that leads to some sort of change in their gender identity?
You can't make the argument that it's not that common, therefore it's okay. That's a poor.
No, I'm saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying it's not that common. I'm saying I think you're just making up possible things that could go wrong. What if they got hit by a car on their way out of the clinic?
A lot of examples of women who, or well, anyone, but I've seen a lot of females who try to transition and change their mind.
Wait, what?
Ever seen that?
Wait, you realize examples have to exist for me to be able to address them, right? Where's this happen? How many friends do you have that have attempted and then backed off transition? Because I know a lot of trans people, and that hasn't happened once. Are you just like
I think that's kind of like a bad faith counter argument to make.
Wait, you just said you've known tons of people who did this.
No, not known personally, but I know of them.
Okay,
and it's really bad faith for you to try to act like I don't know anyone.
You said you know them, so that's what I thought you were saying. But knowing of them doesn't mean anything. There are 8 billion people on Earth. There's that Russia Today documentary on how on like detransitioning and stuff. The rate of detransitioning is astronomically low. It gets played up a lot by people like Blair White and Russia Today and other conservative outlets because they want to pretend that being trans is this big mistake that people are trying to get through like a phase.
People use the same exact argument just for a lot of anti-trans rhetoric when they say, "Oh, the population of trans people is super low." What is it, like 5% or something? So you can't just use the
wait. What? What does that have to do with anything?
I'm just
the percentage of people who detransition are very, very low, like incredibly low. And I wish them all the luck in the world, and I think they should be provided medical resources and support. But what does that have to do with transition?
I'm saying, okay, let me just simplify it. One person is too much. Okay. You can't just say, "Oh, it's not common."
That's not how it works. Are you actually unironically, how old are you?
25.
Okay, so do you think nobody should be given antibiotics because there have been some people who have had adverse allergic reactions to them? Do you think we shouldn't have Rocky Road ice cream because there are some people who have adverse allergic reactions to them? Do you think we should be allowed to drive cars because statistically speaking, car deaths are one of the highest fucking mortality fucking incidents that take place in this country? Jesus Christ, do you have any idea how fucking stupid what you just said to me is? I am legitimately offended that you would actually try to corrupt my fucking brain by putting it in the presence of such a radioactively stupid comment. What the fuck? Okay, one is too much? Yeah. Do you have any idea how many people die in fucking car accidents? This is a completely invalid argument. The science is clear on this. Statistically speaking, the number of people who benefit from puberty blockers is much higher than the people who don't benefit. Massively so. Like this is like 100 to 1, or possibly even higher.
So it's funny that you mentioned about how there should be no roads, because that's the exact argument you made. I'm sorry, this is a tangent, but regarding Trump and possibly opening up the economy.
You did an incredible job avoiding coming to terms with the stupid shit that you just said.
All right, we could sideline that. It's just funny because that was a little kind of minor hypocritical point that I noticed.
If I have ever made any hypocritical comments, I promise you are not going to be the one who discovers them. What is the ad hominems? Let's get past ad hominems. An ad hominem is fallacious. It's where I attack your character rather than attacking your argument. I'm doing both.
Yeah, well, when you call someone dumb, it's the same thing. So let's move on.
Move on to what?
Back to your question. Go ahead. All right. Sorry, we lost. I admit that I went off on a tangent. Okay, I said one is too much, right?
Yes.
Here's the thing: is the opposite happens too, right? People who transition and take puberty block still commit suicide.
Every population has a percentage chance of committing suicide. The chance is much lower if they take puberty blockers. Why are you giving me these arguments? Cis people commit suicide.
Yeah, let's get back to what I'm trying to say.
What are you trying to say?
You can't give a 14-year-old the decision to decide on their height that young.
What the fuck? What decided their height? Wait, what the fuck are you talking about?
I'm not very well spoken, obviously not as well spoken as you, so I'm kind of mumbling a bit. I'm nervous. But it comes down to, this is not a hot take. A 14-year-old should not be able to make a decision as minimizing their penis size and their height.
What the fuck are you talking about? A youth, a minor, in consultation with medical professionals, should be able to collectively make decisions that they believe will lead to the healthiest outcomes for their futures.
That's not good enough. That's
not good. Wait. That's just a fact. That's just how the medical system works. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I've grown increasingly poorly disposed to you with time. You said you've been watching me for 4 months. I don't know if by watching me you mean you've been like staring at a picture of me on that you have fucking a paperclip to your monitor while jerking off. But if you would engage with any of my content, you would know how fucking retarded all the shit that you're saying right now is. Like every argument that you've posited is either unbelievably unsubstantiated or factually incorrect. Why would you waste my time with it? What is this? Listen, this is just a fact, okay? Listen to it, all right?
Okay, try not to get so
young
triggered
people
and
in
focus on the words
consultation
being
with
said.
medical professionals have for millennia made decisions about their health moving forward. Do I believe that a young person should be able to just get on fucking puberty blockers with no medical consultation?
Do you agree with that?
What?
What about circumcision?
No. Because the circumcision doesn't have any bearing on their mortality, their suicidality, or their health in the long term, whereas transitioning does.
But you can't know that.
But what?
A medical professional can't. That's not enough. Just because
then I'm sorry. Then take it up
here.
with fucking John Hopkins, dude. I'm sorry. You seem to have a problem with the way all of society works, or maybe you're like not old enough to like realize like everything you're advocating for would break society as it currently functions. The doctors have been doing this for as long as doctors have been around. This is just a matter of fact. It's how the world works. The implementation of the fact that you only care about like this when puberty blockers are introduced to it implicates bias on your part.
So why is circumcision not okay?
Because for a wide variety, for one, it's fine. It's just forced circumcision on a baby isn't fine. Because it has nothing to do with their long-term health or well-being, and B, because it has nothing to do with their will. Whereas, kids who take hormone blockers aren't exactly forced to take them without any consultation, and B, it's done with the specific intent of increasing their survivability and happiness later in life.
You shouldn't interfere with a person's development unless you know for a fact that it's going to benefit them.
No, you shouldn't interfere. Wait. You shouldn't interfere with a person's development unless you have a statistically significant guarantee that is going to benefit them.
That's exactly my issue. You think stats matter?
Are you? Wait. Is this a troll?
No, wait. I'm not saying stats and facts don't matter. You're trying to.
Wait, are you sure you just said that though? Is this a troll? I feel like this is a troll. I can't believe you've been leading me down this alleyway this entire time. There's no way this can be serious.
You can't just say statistically it works for most people.
That's how all medical procedures work. You do realize no medical procedures have a 100% effectiveness rate, right? No medical procedures.
Optional. So why would you take...
Wait, doesn't matter if it's optional or not. No medical procedure does. Also, the reason why doctors are so supportive...
It does matter if it's optional.
The reason doctors are so supportive of this is because it is statistically so effective at helping. It doesn't violate any prior rules in medical professionalism. It doesn't do anything we haven't been doing before. They've been used for decades, hormone blockers, on cis people without any broader harm being done. There's no reason for you to have a problem with this.
I don't...
All procedures are optional. You could just die.
You're flip-flopping, or like you can't... You're being hypocritical.
All right, wait. This has gone on long enough. Final words.
If you're okay with circumcision, or you're not okay with circumcision, but you're okay with...
Fucking retard. Jesus Christ. He's banned. Ban him in chat, too. Who's mod right now? Get him out of here. Wasting my fucking time. At least most dipshits have the presence of mind to understand when they've been blown the fuck out.